The conference room felt like a prison cell. Every word from Wade's mouth was another bar slamming into place around me. "This proposal is garbage," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "Did you even bother researching any of this before wasting everyone's time?" I stood at the front of the room, my presentation slides still projecting behind me. 22 pairs of eyes watched, the entire board of directors, regional managers, and the executive team. No one spoke. No one intervened. "Let me explain I started. "No, let me explain." Wade cut me off, rising from his seat. "This is what happens when we promote people who aren't ready. This is what happens when we lower standards." He walked toward me, picking up my printed proposal. "Look at this. Page after page of unrealistic projections. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Did you think we're all as incompetent as you?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing this presentation. Nights, weekends, early mornings, all to have him dissect it in front of everyone who mattered at the company. If we followed these suggestions, we'd lose millions. "Is that what you want, Alice? To bankrupt us with your stupidity?" Someone coughed. Another shifted in their seat. The clock on the wall showed we were only 15 minutes into the scheduled 2-hour meeting. Wade wasn't finished. "Maybe you're confused about your role here. You're not an innovator. You're not a leader. You're barely qualified to be in this room." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "Everyone in this room is wondering why you're here. I'm wondering too. What exactly do you bring to this company? Because from where I stand, it's nothing." The minutes stretched into an hour, then longer. His critique expanded beyond my proposal to every project I'd touched in the past year. He brought up minor mistakes from months ago. He questioned my education, my experience, my intelligence. "You're worthless to this team," he finally said, slamming his hand on the table. "Completely worthless." The room fell silent. 75 minutes of nonstop degradation hung in the air. I looked at him, then at the faces around the table. Some looked away, others stared at their notes. A few watched me with what might have been pity. I took a slow, deep breath and straightened my shoulders. My voice came out steady, surprising even me. "Are you finished?" Wade blinked, thrown off by my calmness. "Because if you are," I continued, "I'd like to address the actual numbers in my proposal." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "We don't need to waste more time on this." "Then perhaps we should adjourn," I suggested. The meeting ended abruptly. As everyone filed out, I gathered my materials, my hands steady, despite everything. Wade stormed out without looking back. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't been recording just the meeting today. I'd been documenting everything for months, and tomorrow would change everything. If you're curious about what happened next in this workplace showdown, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to catch the full story. The events that unfold after this moment will show exactly why you should never underestimate someone you've pushed too far. Drop a comment if you've ever witnessed or experienced workplace bullying. It helps more people find this story. My name is Alice Kwan. Until 6 months ago, I was a senior project developer at Trinity Innovations, a mid-sized tech company with big ambitions and even bigger egos. I wasn't always the woman who could stand calmly through a public execution disguised as a meeting. That version of me was forged through months of strategic patience. When I first joined Trinity, I was excited. The company had a solid reputation for innovation, competitive benefits, and room for advancement. What the job listings didn't mention was Wade Barrett, my direct supervisor, and the company's golden boy. His department consistently outperformed others, his projects came in under budget, and the CEO treated him like a son. What I learned too late was that Wade's success came with a body count. 3 women had quit the department in the 2 months before I arrived. During my first week, the HR director casually mentioned that turnover had been a bit high lately, but assured me it was just one of those cycles. The pattern became clear within weeks. Wade was charming to those above him and brutal to those below. My first encounter with his temper came after I suggested an alternative approach during a team meeting. "If we restructured the database this way," I'd said, pointing to my notes, "we could reduce processing time by about 40%. Wade had smiled, actually smiled, before responding. "That's an interesting theory from someone who's been here all of 5 minutes. When you understand how things actually work here, then maybe your input will be valuable." The room had gone quiet. My face had burned as I nodded and made a show of writing something down, as though I'd received constructive feedback rather than a public dismissal. That interaction set the tone. Small criticisms evolved into open contempt, He interrupted me in meetings, assigned me impossible deadlines, then criticized my work as rushed and sloppy. He excluded me from crucial emails, then reprimanded me for not having information I was never given. I wasn't the only target. There was Nina from marketing, whose campaign ideas were stolen then criticized. There was Danielle in finance, who was passed over for promotion 3 times, despite perfect performance reviews. There was Jeremy, the only male assistant in the office, who Wade referred to as the secretary, despite his MBA and technical expertise. We all had different reasons for staying. For some, it was financial necessity. For others, it was determination not to be driven away. For me, it became something else entirely. 3 months into my employment, I visited my grandmother, May, in the hospital. She'd built a business empire from nothing, starting with a single shop in the 1970s and expanding into investments that few people knew about. She lay in her hospital bed, still elegant despite the tubes and monitors, and listened as I vented about Wade. "You could find another job," she said when I finished. "With your skills, any company would be lucky." "That's what he wants," I replied. "He wants to break people until they leave. Then he hires someone new and starts over." Grandmother studied me, her eyes sharp despite her illness. "What do you want to do about it?" "I want him to face consequences. Real ones. Not just a slap on the wrist." She nodded slowly. "My mother, your great-grandmother, had a saying, 'The patient hunter doesn't chase the prey. She creates a path that leads the prey to her.' What does that mean in this situation?" Grandmother smiled. "It means sometimes the strongest response isn't leaving or fighting back immediately. Sometimes it's waiting and creating the right circumstances." "I'm not sure I have that kind of patience," I admitted. "You're more like me than you know," she said, reaching for my hand. "Tell me everything about this man and this company. Every detail." That conversation changed everything. Over the next months, as her health declined, we spoke regularly about Wade, about Trinity's corporate structure, about the other victims of his behavior who had left or stayed. She asked questions I wouldn't have thought to ask, looking for patterns and vulnerabilities. "Companies protect people like him because they deliver results," she explained. "To change anything, you need leverage, not just evidence of bad behavior, but something that threatens what the company values most." 2 weeks before her death, she asked me to bring my laptop to the hospital. She dictated an email to her attorney, which I didn't fully understand at the time. When I asked about it, she simply said, "Insurance, for both of us." After she passed, I threw myself into work, partly from grief, and partly because something in me had changed. I began watching Wade with new eyes, seeing not just his cruelty, but the careful way he managed perceptions, how he built alliances, how he isolated his targets. And I started keeping records, not just notes, but strategic information. I installed an app on my phone that recorded meetings. I saved emails, screenshots, performance reviews. I created a timeline of incidents involving not just me, but others. Then came the day of the board presentation. My proposal, a complete restructuring of our client onboarding system, would either establish me as a serious player or give Wade the ammunition to push me out completely. I knew which outcome he was betting on. What I didn't know, not until my phone rang the morning after that disastrous meeting, was exactly what my grandmother had set in motion before she died. The phone rang at 7:15 a.m. as I was getting ready for work. Unknown number. "Is this Alice Kwan?" a man's voice asked. "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Robert Chen. I was your grandmother's attorney for over 30 years. I sat down on the edge of my bed. "Mr. Chen, she mentioned you often. I'm calling because it's time to open what May referred to as your contingency package." She was very specific about the timing. It was to be delivered exactly 3 months after her passing, unless you contacted me directly with a specific phrase. My heart raced. What phrase? "Are you finished?" Those exact words, in that order. "Are you finished?" The room seemed to tilt. The same words I'd spoken to Wade yesterday. How did she? "Your grandmother was extraordinary in many ways," Robert said. "But her ability to predict human behavior was perhaps her greatest talent. Are you able to meet this morning? There's quite a lot to discuss." 2 hours later, I sat in a sleek downtown law office as Robert spread documents across his desk. "Trinity Innovations is owned by Ascendant Capital Group," he explained. "Your grandmother began acquiring shares in Ascendant 15 years ago through various holding companies. As of her passing, she controlled nearly 12% of Ascendant, making her estate one of the largest minority shareholders." I struggled to process this. My grandmother owned part of my company? Not just owned. She served on Ascendant's advisory board through a proxy for the last decade. She was particularly interested in their corporate culture initiatives. Robert gave me a meaningful look, or lack thereof. He slid a folder toward me. This contains every complaint filed against Wade Barrett over the past 8 years. 36 women and 12 men have either formally complained or cited him as their reason for leaving. Ascendant has paid settlements to 11 former employees. If they know he's a problem, why protect him? Numbers. His department consistently outperforms projections by 20%. The CEO considers those results worth the occasional payout. Robert's expression hardened. Your grandmother disagreed. He handed me another folder. This one contained financial analyses, performance metrics, and staffing reports. Wade's success is built on a systematic pattern of theft, Robert explained. He hires talented people, pushes them to breaking point, takes credit for their work, then drives them out before they can establish themselves. The department succeeds despite his leadership, not because of it. And no one's noticed this pattern? Some have tried to raise concerns. Wade has powerful allies on the board who've protected him. Until now, my phone buzzed. A text from HR. Please come to the 5th floor conference room at 10:30. Robert smiled when I showed him. Right on schedule. What exactly did my grandmother arrange? 3 board members aligned with your grandmother's estate called an emergency meeting last night. They presented evidence of Wade's pattern of behavior, including recordings from yesterday's meeting. Recordings? I only recorded it on my phone. The conference room has built-in recording capabilities for minute taking purposes. The board members requested those recordings, completely within their rights, and reviewed them along with your performance data and complaint history. I felt lightheaded. What happens now? That depends on you. Robert handed me an envelope. Your grandmother left specific instructions. Read this privately before your meeting. In the bathroom of the law office, I opened the envelope with shaking hands. My dearest Alice, if you're reading this, then Wade has shown his true colors publicly, just as I predicted he would. Men like him cannot help themselves. They mistake kindness for weakness, patience for fear. You now have a choice. The board is prepared to terminate Wade immediately. They will offer you compensation for your suffering and promise changes. This is the easy path. The harder path, the one I believe you'll choose, requires more courage, but creates lasting change. Wade is a symptom of a culture that values profit over people. Removing him alone won't heal the system that created him. I've arranged an alternative. The details are in the documents Robert has prepared. This path requires you to face Wade again, but on entirely different terms. Whatever you choose, remember, true power isn't in destruction. It's in transformation. With endless faith in you, May. At 10:30, I entered the conference room, the same one where Wade had humiliated me yesterday. Inside waited the HR director, the CEO, and 3 board members I recognized from yesterday's meeting. Ms. Kwan, the CEO began, we need to discuss yesterday's incident with Wade Barrett. Before we start, I said, opening my folder, I'd like to propose something. Their expressions shifted from sympathy to surprise as I outlined my grandmother's plan. By the time I finished, the CEO was leaning forward, fascinated despite himself. That's unprecedented, he said finally. So is having a manager drive out 48 employees in 8 years. I countered. The oldest board member, a woman with silver hair, smiled slightly. May always did think differently. I'm curious to see if her theory proves correct. At 11:45, Wade was called to HR. I wasn't present for that meeting, but according to the text Robert received from one board member, his face went white, proceeding to phase 2. I was back at my desk, trying to focus on work, when Wade appeared. His usual confident stride was gone. He moved like someone in shock. We need to talk, he said quietly. I followed him to a small meeting room. His hands trembled as he closed the door. Your grandmother was that influential with the board? Why didn't you say something? I continued standing, arms crossed. Are you finished? He flinched at the phrase. Look, I didn't know. Nobody told me who you were connected to. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me differently than the others who left? That's exactly why I never said anything. His eyes widened. The board is questioning everything now. Years of my work. No, they're questioning why the company lost 48 talented people under your leadership. The human cost of your behavior. Wade paced the small room. They said I have to either leave immediately or accept some kind of position under you? That can't be right. It's not under me. It's a new division. Workplace culture and accountability. This is insane. I'm the highest performing manager in the company. Are you? Or do you just take credit for other people's work before driving them away? His face flushed. That's not Nina's marketing campaign that won the industry award last year. She created that concept. You called it pedestrian in 3 meetings before presenting a refined version to the board, which was identical to her original proposal. Wade's mouth opened and closed. Jeremy's client management system that saved the company millions? You told him it was amateur work, then presented it as your own innovation 2 weeks later. You can't prove. It's all documented. Every idea you've stolen, every person you've pushed out, every lie you've told. I moved toward the door. Your choice is simple. Leave with nothing, or join the new division and learn what actual leadership looks like. A trainee position? After 15 years here? That's humiliating. More humiliating than what you did to me yesterday? More humiliating than what you've done to dozens of others? I opened the door. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. As I walked away, I heard him call after me. Alice, wait. We can work something out between us. I didn't turn around. That night, I couldn't sleep. Had I gone too far? Not far enough? What if the company decided my grandmother's plan was too complicated and simply fired Wade with a generous severance package, allowing him to move to another company and repeat the pattern? At 6 a.m., my phone rang. It was Robert. He's accepted the position, he said without preamble. He's staying? I couldn't hide my surprise. The financial incentives were persuasive. If he quits, his contract requires repayment of 5 years of performance bonuses. If he's fired for cause, he loses his stock options. If he completes the 1-year training program, he keeps everything. So he chose money over pride. People usually do, Robert replied. The question is, are you prepared for what comes next? I thought of my grandmother's letter. This path requires you to face Wade again, but on entirely different terms. I'm ready. The new Workplace Culture and Accountability Division launched the following Monday. Wade arrived to find his spacious corner office had been reassigned. His new workspace was a small desk in an open office area, directly across from mine. His first assignment lay waiting. A binder containing exit interviews from every employee who had left the company citing his behavior. Next to it sat a phone and a list of names and numbers. What's this? He asked, his voice tight. Your first project. You're going to call every person on that list and listen to their experiences. You won't defend yourself. You won't explain. You'll simply listen and acknowledge what they tell you. This is ridiculous. I'm not calling. Then you're choosing to leave without your bonuses or stock options. Your choice. He sat down heavily. The board actually approved this? Unanimously. They're quite interested in this. Experiment. Wade stared at the phone. And you'll be what? My babysitter? I'll be your supervisor, just like you were mine. I handed him a performance metrics document, identical to the ones he had used to criticize my work. We'll have weekly reviews. The look he gave me contained such hatred that I almost stepped back. Almost. Instead, I smiled. I suggest you start with Nina. She's expecting your call at 9. The first call was painful to witness. Wade's face cycled through anger, defensiveness, and finally, as Nina presumably detailed her experiences, something that might have been shame. When he hung up, he looked shaken. 1 down, I said. 47 to go. As I walked back to my desk, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and unease. This wasn't a conventional revenge. There would be no dramatic firing, no public humiliation, well, no more than he had already experienced. Instead, Wade would face something perhaps more difficult, the slow, daily reckoning with the consequences of his actions. Would it change him? I didn't know, but it would certainly change the company. And somewhere, I imagined my grandmother smiling. What I didn't realize then was that Wade's journey through accountability was just beginning, and that the true test of my grandmother's plan would come not from his resistance, but from unexpected quarters that neither of us had anticipated. The next few weeks unfolded like a strange social experiment. Each morning, Wade would arrive precisely at 8 a.m., his expression a careful mask of neutrality. He'd nod stiffly to anyone who greeted him, then sit at his small desk and begin his assigned tasks without complaint. By the end of the first week, he had contacted 15 former employees. Some calls lasted only minutes, people who hung up after telling Wade exactly what they thought of him. Others stretched for over an hour, detailed accounts of projects stolen, credit denied, public humiliations endured. I observed these calls from a distance. noting how Wade's posture changed. His shoulders gradually curved inward. The arrogant tilt of his chin lowered. The booming voice that had dominated meetings for years softened. After each call, he would make notes in a journal as required by the program. Occasionally, I would catch him staring into space, seemingly lost in thought. "Is this really necessary?" he asked after a particularly difficult call with Jeremy, who had left the company 6 months earlier after Wade had taken credit for his client management system. "Which part?" I asked. "The public display of all this." He gestured around the open office where everyone could see his demotion in real time. "I could do these calls privately. The point isn't just for you to hear their stories, Wade. It's for you to experience being visible while vulnerable, just like they were." He didn't respond, but I saw his jaw tighten. By the third week, whispers spread through the company. People who had avoided me after the infamous board meeting now stopped by my desk with coffee or lunch invitations. They shared their own Wade stories, smaller incidents that hadn't warranted formal complaints but had contributed to the toxic culture. "He made me redo a presentation 5 times, said Lynn from product development. Each time he'd say it wasn't good enough, but wouldn't explain why. On the 6th version, he said, "Finally," and presented it as his own work. "He told me my ideas were too emotional for a technical environment," said Tyler from engineering, then implemented them anyway 3 months later. The pattern was always the same: belittle, steal, promote himself. Wade must have heard these conversations happening around him. He kept his eyes on his computer screen, but his ears flushed red. At our first monthly review meeting, I presented Wade with feedback from his calls and a self-assessment form. "This feels like punishment, not training," he said, pushing the form away. "It's accountability," I corrected. "Something you've never experienced." "So that's what this is about? Revenge?" I considered my response carefully. "If I wanted revenge, Wade, you'd be unemployed and unhireable. This is about something more important." "What could possibly be more important to you than watching me suffer?" "Change," I said simply. "Real, lasting change. Not just for you, but for the entire company." "Real?" He laughed bitterly. "You really think one person can change a corporate culture?" My grandmother did. That silenced him. As the weeks progressed, Wade completed his calls to former employees and began the next phase, directly working with the people he had mistreated who still remained at Trinity. This meant sitting in meetings, not as the intimidating leader, but as the junior member of the team, listening, taking notes, contributing only when asked. The first cracks in my grandmother's plan appeared during week 6. I arrived at work to find Robert waiting by my desk, his expression grave. "We have a situation," he said quietly. "3 executives from Wade's former department have approached the board with concerns about the new arrangement." "What kind of concerns?" "They're arguing that the program is causing productivity issues. Wade's former team's numbers are down 15% since his reassignment. That's because they relied on Wade to steal ideas from other departments." I pointed out, "The board understands that, but they're under pressure. These executives are threatening to leave if Wade isn't reinstated." "They're bluffing." Robert shook his head. 2 have competing offers. If they go, others might follow." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "So the board is considering ending the program?" I felt a cold knot form. "They've called a meeting for Friday. They want you to present data showing the program's value. It's only been 6 weeks. We don't have enough data yet." Robert placed his hand on my shoulder. "Then you'll need to find another way to convince them." That evening, I spread my notes across my apartment floor, trying to formulate a strategy. The board wanted numbers, but the most important changes, the cultural shifts, the renewed confidence among previously silenced employees, it couldn't be quantified so quickly. My phone rang. "Nina, I heard about the board meeting," she said without preamble. "How?" Wade told me. I sat up straighter. "Wade contacted you?" "He called to follow up on our conversation from a few weeks ago. He wanted to know if there was anything else I remembered that he should address." This was unexpected. Was he fishing for support? "That's what I thought at first," Nina admitted. "But he seemed, I don't know, different. He asked specific questions about projects where he'd taken credit for my work. He actually took notes." After we hung up, I stared at my phone, wondering what game Wade was playing. Was he genuinely participating in the program? Or setting up some counter-strategy? The next day, I noticed Wade was absent from his desk. His calendar showed no meetings. When he finally appeared after lunch, he nodded to me but said nothing. This pattern continued for 3 days. Wade would disappear for hours, return briefly, then leave again. Each time he seemed preoccupied. On Thursday, The day before the board meeting, I confronted him. Where have you been? He looked up, his expression unreadable. Working. On what? Because it's not the assignments I've given you. Wade hesitated, then reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. On this, inside was a comprehensive analysis of every project his department had completed over the past 5 years. Each page detailed the original creator of the work, the contributions of team members, and Wade's actual input, which was often minimal. You've been documenting your own theft, I said, stunned. I've been documenting the truth, he corrected. Isn't that what this program is about? I flipped through the pages. The level of detail was impressive and damning. Why? Wade ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd never seen from him before. Because after 47 phone calls hearing the same story about myself, I had to face what I've been doing. And this helps you how? It doesn't, it helps them. He nodded toward the office beyond us. The people whose work I took? I studied his face, looking for deception. You're giving up your greatest protection. Without the perception that you're irreplaceable, the board could still decide to terminate you. I know. For the first time since I'd known him, Wade looked uncertain. But continuing like this, he gestured at the folder. It's exhausting, keeping track of all the lies, always looking over my shoulder. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Robert. Board meeting moved up. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. They're not giving us much time, I muttered. Us? Wade raised an eyebrow. I tapped the folder. If you're serious about this, then yes, us. That night, we worked until midnight in a conference room, organizing Wade's documentation and preparing our presentation. The dynamic was surreal, working alongside the man who had spent months tearing me down, now focused on the same goal. Why did you do it? I asked during a brief break. Treat people that way for so long? Wade was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Fear, he finally said. I was terrified of being exposed as not good enough, not smart enough. So I took other people's brilliance and made it mine. That doesn't excuse it. No, he agreed. It doesn't. The board meeting the next morning was tense from the start. The 3 executives who had complained sat together, their expressions smug as they outlined their concerns about declining productivity and disruption to established workflows. When they finished, the CEO turned to me. Miss Kwan, your response? I stood, but before I could speak, Wade rose as well. I'd like to address the board first, if I may. Surprised murmurs rippled through the room. The CEO nodded cautiously. Wade placed his folder on the table. For 8 years, I've presented myself as Trinity's most valuable asset. I'm here to tell you that was a lie. For the next 30 minutes, Wade methodically detailed his pattern of behavior, the stolen ideas, the suppressed innovations, the talented people driven away. He named names, cited specific projects, and provided the documentation we had organized. The success attributed to me belongs to at least 48 other people, he concluded. People who were silenced, dismissed, or pushed out. That's not leadership. That's theft. The room was utterly silent. One of the complaining executives had gone pale. Another was frantically texting under the table. So what are you suggesting? The CEO asked finally. Wade looked at me, then back at the board. I'm suggesting you listen to Alice Kwan's original proposal, the one I spent 90 minutes attacking 3 months ago. It wasn't just about client onboarding. It was about restructuring how we value contributions throughout the company. As Wade sat down, I felt a shift in the room's energy. The board members who had seemed skeptical now leaned forward with interest. The CEO's expression had changed from impatience to thoughtfulness. I presented my original proposal, now expanded to include data from the Workplace Culture and Accountability Program. I explained how recognizing individual contributions while fostering true collaboration could transform productivity beyond what Wade's department had achieved through fear and theft. When I finished, the CEO looked at the 3 executives who had complained. Do you have any response to this? They exchanged glances, clearly rattled. We would need time to review these claims. One managed. I think we've heard enough, said the silver-haired board member who had supported my grandmother's plan from the beginning. I move that we continue the program as established and implement Ms. Kwan's restructuring proposal immediately. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting concluded, Wade approached me. Was this what your grandmother intended all along? I thought about May's letter. True power isn't in destruction, it's in transformation. I think she hoped for change, I said, but even she couldn't have predicted this particular outcome. 1 year later, Trinity Innovations was featured in a business magazine article titled Culture Correction: How One Company Transformed Toxic Leadership into Collaborative Success. The piece detailed our restructured departments, transparent attribution policies, and improved retention rates. Wade completed the program and accepted a position as a regular team member, no special title, no corner office. He worked diligently, contributed thoughtfully, and never again took credit for another person's idea. Some employees never fully trusted him, but most came to respect his commitment to change. As for me, I was promoted to head the Permanent Workplace Culture Division, reporting directly to the board. The client onboarding system I had proposed, the one Wade had called garbage, was implemented company-wide and increased client satisfaction by 42%. My grandmother's attorney, Robert, now sits on Trinity's board, representing her estate's interests. Together, we've helped 3 other companies implement similar accountability programs. The most meaningful validation came 6 months after that fateful board meeting. A young developer stopped by my office, looking nervous. "I have an idea," she said, clutching her laptop, "but I'm afraid to present it. What if someone takes it?" I smiled and pointed to the framed quote on my wall. My grandmother's words, "True power isn't in destruction, it's in transformation." "That won't happen here," I assured her. "Not anymore. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Have you ever witnessed a workplace transformation, whether personal or organizational? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, change often begins with one person brave enough to say, "Are you finished?" when facing injustice. Your story might be the catalyst someone else needs to find their voice.